Hello again, chess enthusiasts. In this delightful position in front of us, where white is the equivalent in points of being a rook down, the task set is for white to checkmate in 3 moves. The first thing to note is that the black king cannot legally move. The second thing to note is that this rook is pinned. In fact, black doesn't have that many moves. If you look at it, he can move this pawn, move the bishop a couple of times, move this pawn once and this rook once, and that's about his lot. So the task set really shouldn't be that difficult. What I noticed, and maybe some of you looking at this position might also notice, is that if you go here with this knight, white is threatening rook here and then rook there mate. Rook here is not a problem because you could take the pawn, the rook would interpose, and then it would be checkmate with the knight covering f3. But the problem with knight e5, of course the rook can't take it because it's pinned like I've just said, but the problem with knight e5 is that this pawn would take here. And you notice with this pawn gone, white no longer has any protection for this square. So after rook f3, he's not threatening rook f4 mate any longer. So that, I'm afraid, is not the solution. So I thought to myself, why not look around for another move with that knight? And this is the key to it. It is a move with that knight. Can you see it? Okay, well, the key move, it's a waiting move, but it's also a sacrifice, which is knight to d4. Now, what white is threatening here is there are 7 replies by black, and in 6 of them, with one of those knights, you deliver checkmate on the 3rd move. On the 7th line, you deliver checkmate with a rook. So let's just have a look at the replies, moving from queenside to kingside. Supposing he comes here, what do we do against that? Well, what we do is we play knight to b3. And what this knight is threatening is to go to d2, delivering mate, or to c5. Now, quite naturally, most would say, oh, well, he's bound to take this knight off here and give check. That's right. But like I've just said, knight c5 is checkmate, because in spite of the rook attacking it, it's not really, because it's pinned and all the other squares are covered. So that is variation 1. Right, let's just go back for a moment. And that is the starting position. Okay, so we take on d4. We've just looked at a3 and it doesn't work. So what do we look at next? Well, we look at the bishop moves next. Bishop to b7. What has black overlooked here? Well, what he's overlooked is that moving his bishop to b7, he no longer has protection of that e-pawn. And then, no matter what black does, again, it's knight c5. He can take this knight, but it's knight c5 with the same knight, but in a different route. Before we went knight to b3, now we've gone knight e6. So, just to prove the point, just say he made any inconsequential move, or he takes this knight off. With check again, it makes no odds. It's knight to c5. So there's absolutely nothing doing there. Right, so we're back with the original position, and we've played the key move of knight d4. We've looked at a3 and we've looked at bishop b7. What about bishop d7? What's he overlooked here? Well, he's overlooked this time that you can take this pawn. And we're in the same situation, but you notice with the other knight this time, and no matter what black does there, let's just say he takes this off, well then it is again knight c5 because the rook is pinned, it can't capture the knight and all the squares are covered. So that is all over. Right, so let's press on. So again, that is the original position. So after knight d4, we have a3, bishop b7, bishop d7 out the way. So what about if black takes this knight on the move? What do we do there? Well, we interpose here, knight to b5. Can't capture it with the rook. He can take it with the pawn, but the problem is, you see, the threat is rook d4 mate. So if he takes it with a pawn, that's game over. So the only way that he can stop rook d4 is by playing e5. So what happens then? Well then, this knight checkmates him there, because now it's free to move. Black has self-blocked the rook attack on the king. So that's all over. Let's look at the other knight capture. So we're back with the original position. We'll take this off. We've just looked at c takes b4. What about c takes d4? And that pawn is there, of course. Check. What happens then? Well, if you recall, when black took on b5, we had the knight here to play b5. Now he's taken on d4. We play this to d5, blocking the check. And again, the threat is rook d4 mate. And again, the only way that he can stop it is by playing e5. What happens now? Well, now we can go here and we can take advantage of the fact that this rook is still pinned, and that's game over. So that is all rather neat. What else do we have? Black is running out of moves. Okay, that is the original position. We take on d4. What about e5 on the first move? Well, here he's doing himself no favours because he's further self-blocking on that first rank. So how do we reply to that? Well, what we do here is we play knight to f3. And the threat, which cannot be parried, it doesn't matter what black does there. He can take here now, but there's no check because of this pawn in the way, and this, of course, is pinned. No matter what he does, it's there on the next move, and that is checkmate. And so those are the first 6 lines all done with. And as I said at the outset, checkmate is delivered in every instance with one of the knights. So we're back to the original position there. So for the final time, the key move is knight to d4. So we've looked at a3, bishop b7, bishop d7, takes, e5. This rook cannot move, neither can these pawns. The only other reply is rook g5, which I mentioned at the very outset that it didn't work against knight to e5, but that taking on e3 did. Well, this time he has no opportunity to take on e3, does he? Because he doesn't have a pawn on d4. Our knight is on d4. So what do we do there? Well, all that we need to do there is what I said earlier. Rook takes. Check. Now the knight here covers the square. The pawn here covers there. Takes. And that is checkmate. There's a very interesting problem with plenty of pins and self-blocks. And very nicely done it is, and well done to anyone who could solve this. And goodbye to you.